So thank you for agreeing to do the interview with us. To start off, what was the first thing you did today when you came to the office?
I was angry about the fact that our coffee machine is broken, and I raged about the process that we need as a small company to procure a new one, because they're super expensive and everybody wants something else. So yeah, that was the first thing in the morning. Well, we are focused on the energy business and the transition of the energy systems in Germany, and especially in cities with the district heating, for example, and being part of the movement that is not only making money with the so-called Energiewende, but also is part of the movement to create a new and kind of better environment, more sustainable world, more sustainable cities, more smarter cities and smarter districts is something I take pride in, and I think that that is the best motivation of my work. That every day I come to work, we help a little bit to make the world a better place, and that is not only pathetic but also true. Yeah, I can say the name openly, but we just finished a relatively long process where we searched partners for a new district in Berlin that has a reasonable size in the northwestern parts of the city. And one of the key elements of that partnership is that it's not only the energy that has to be sustainable and green and delivered within a fair price band to the customers there, but also a lot of infrastructural services that need to come with that. For example, free mobility based on electric self-driving shuttles in the district, or waste disposal system that will not have the need that diesel-powered trucks need to carry the waste in the district, but it's done electrically. Or the possibility for the people to have intelligent storage room and locker areas where they can just use the app if they need the Christmas tree lighting on demand, and they will push a button and it will be brought to them, so they don't need to storage everything in their flat, for example. And the idea of the whole district is to give the urban city room back to the people. So how can you bring the cars out of the district? How can you make the space more livable in the urban city for the people? And that is something that is not only a good idea, but that is a huge problem to design a business case for an investor, so to speak, that will be there for the next 20 years to provide all the services and all the infrastructural elements and still make money on it. Because if the investors have to invest high amounts of money, 3-digit million figures, so they need an investment on that. And to try to bring that together, the possibility to make money and the will to create new districts with a better life for the inhabitants, that is something that we work on as consultants, and that is something we just closed, and that was the biggest deal I personally managed to make happen in my career. And that is something that is a good example why it not only pays, but it also contributes to the development of the city to work in that kind of field. Well, I think first and foremost the gas grid, because if we want to have a zero carbon footprint society, which is a goal we should all try to reach, and if we say it should be done by 2050, for example, then if the large and very important assets that the gas grid represents should still play a role in 2040, they need to change the content, so to speak. I think that something that Vattenfall, for example, does in Berlin with the claim fossil-free within 1 generation, and that they will get rid of the coal, and then they will start to get rid of the natural gas-fired power plants, and will use substitutes, use green electricity, use heat pumps and stuff. So like the getting greener of the district heating, that has been done on the electricity side. I think that that's a good example in the German Energiewende, that even a large industrial nation can provide huge amounts of electricity and capacity to the industry based on renewable energies. And it started with the electricity, and it then went on to the district heating, and the next step will be the gas grid. So if we have cities like Berlin, where you can't just demolish every existing building because it's not possible by a lot of reasons to insulate them to a standard where they can use heat pumps, for example, there won't be all electric scenarios in the future, and not in 2040. So for 2040. So with the all electric scenario not on the table, we need scenarios in the urban energy scenarios that also include the district heating, and that also include the gas grid, the existing gas grid, which is, just a side note, mostly owned by the municipalities in Germany. So if you take the gas grid away, you can just close like half of the swimming pools and the libraries and stuff, because that is something that is making money, and it's regulated by the state, by the Bundesnetzagentur. So it's a very secure asset where you have a nice possibility to make money for the municipalities, for example. And taking that into consideration, I think it's a very urgent need to start with the hydrogen strategy that it just have been passed, and to start to blend in hydrogen in the natural gas mix, so to speak. That, from my perspective, something that happened on the electricity side, that we had like 5% each year more renewable energy, something like that has to happen on the gas side. If it doesn't happen, the gas grid will lose its value and won't be there in 2040. And because the buildings, they just need high temperatures for the heating. The old buildings, the nice buildings, not the ugly things from the 60s, but everything that's under Denkmalschutz, so to speak. There's no possibility right now to use electricity in heat pumps to provide the heat in an efficient way. So there will be the need for high temperatures, and that will be done with gas, not natural gas, but gas, synthetic gas, hydrogen, maybe some blends, I don't know, but that is something the Berlin and the Brandenburg area will have to work on. And actually they do, kind of, because there's always have been the idea that you can use the Berlin-Brandenburg area to generate, for example, biomass and biogas, and that may be used in the city, in the multi-family homes, for example. And that is something the legislation took off now with the Gebäudeenergiegesetz, with the last iteration of the law, that you have to oblige when you're in the heating market, for example, and that will help so that the urban Berlin and the more rural Brandenburg can grow together in a way that both can profit from each other. That is something that is needed if we want to have sustainable districts and sustainable cities, not only far away in the future, but 2040, which is like 19 years away. So it's tomorrow, and we need to start now. Yeah, for example, that it's for the first time it's possible to use biogas that is produced in Brandenburg, for example, and fed into the gas grid in Berlin, not only in micro CHP or CHP units, but also in boilers. So that is the first time that there's an outlet for something like real green gas, because, you know, before that, there was only one state in Germany, that was Baden-Württemberg, that had a law, a specific law, only available in Baden-Württemberg, the E-Wärme-G, that opened up the possibility, if you have no other option, like a multi-family home, there's no real option for solar thermal, for example, and you have no space for a fuel cell, and you can't use a heat pump because the temperatures of the radiators are too high. So the list of things you could do right now, 2020, to contribute to the goals of 2040 were kind of small. And what they did was, well, if there's no other opportunity, just don't use natural gas, blend in sustainable biogas, for example, biomethane, that is fed into the gas grid. And that is something that opens up possibilities for the urban Wärmewende, so to speak, for a lot of use cases where before you just had no other option but to just use a boiler. And now you still use a boiler, but you make the fuel, so to speak, greener. And I think efficiency first is still something that we should focus on, but where efficiency just fails or stops to make any more sense, then we should make the energy greener. And that is something that now comes into place in my specific field of the energy business and the heat market in general. But another important thing that has to be done is the so-called Sektorkopplung, like using electricity in the heat market. And that kind of is the next big thing the politics have to work on, because the legislation, how it's at the moment, is just not suitable for real use cases for using electricity and surplus electricity, renewable surplus electricity in the heat market, where you could substitute like even oil or gas, because we have a lot of installed capacity of renewable energies. And if there's too much energy available, it's not only a price signal that is the problem, but the grid fees, for example. If you take 1 kilowatt hour of surplus 100% renewable green energy from Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, so to speak, and just bring it to Berlin, and you substitute 1 kilowatt hour of gas, you have significant CO2 savings, but there's no business case, because you have to pay all the grid fees and everything that is related to that. And that is something that needs to change to give the industry more flexibilities to use renewable energies in urban surroundings and in cities. Because I mean, yeah, sure, you can put PV on every roof, and you could do this and you could do that, but in the end, a city like Berlin that is so urbanized has no chance on being like net zero on their own renewable energies. It has to be something like an exchange with the areas around Berlin, and I think that the Berlin-Brandenburg cluster is a very, very good idea to create both a rural area that can profit from the city and a city that can profit from the rural area. That is no problem. Yeah, the production sites would be in Brandenburg, and some players like Vattenfall, for example, and I have no Vattenfall ticket saying that, but it's just a good idea. They have something, I don't know the English word, but it's called, in German, it's called Ersatzbrennstoffe. So what do? They have really big, I mean, Berlin has a lot of need for energy and for heat. And they have a plant that is providing district heating, and it's fired by coal, for example. And what they do is they use biomass in so-called KUPs, Kurzumtriebsplantagen. That is fully automated, done by drones, fields where just biomass is growing, and then 3 times a year, drones and robots will just cut it down, and then it was brought into Berlin, and then they substitute coal with that biomass, and then you have a good leverage for CO2 savings, because the specific emissions of a ton of coal are way higher than, for example, or 1 kilowatt hour is a better comparison. 1 kilowatt hour of coal and 1 kilowatt hour of biomass, they have a really big delta in the CO2 emissions, and that is something like a total feasible use case how Berlin and Brandenburg can profit from each other. You have three big hurdles. The first one is that building new neighborhoods is super expensive. I mean, the people need to still be able to rent that or to buy it. And with the prices we have right now, it's just getting more and more luxurious to rent new flats in nice surroundings, or even buy a house or a flat in Berlin. I mean, basically, you're an architect. I mean, no normal income family is capable of buying a single family home in Berlin anymore. That is so gone and so done. You really need a lot of money, and that is something that the new generation has to face as a real problem, because my generation has problems doing it, but we are the last one that could do it. I mean, you guys are like 15 years younger. No chance when you don't win the lottery that you can buy some nice single family home in Zehlendorf. That is just, or in Steglitz or in Marzahn or anywhere else. No chance. So I think the price is a real big problem, because when you think of really cool and new and sophisticated and innovative districts, there's always components that won't pay for themselves and will hire even the price for the building of the district and the neighborhood. And that is a real problem, because that is something that is just unfair, that it's a little bit like only the rich people can contribute to new neighborhoods and to new cool ideas of living, because the normal people can't pay the rent. And I want to add something to that. The big German, not the big German, the big Berlin Wohnungsbaugesellschaft, like GmbH or DGWO and all those that are owned by the state of Berlin, they go into that district, into that neighborhoods, and they buy in, and they say, well, I will rent 60% of that flats for $6.50 the square meter as the cold rent, so to speak, because I want that there is a social mix and not only the rich people live there. So it's actually a really big problem, is that when you build cool and new stuff that everybody craves and likes, it's super expensive. That is one hurdle, and that need to be addressed in the future. The second part is the legislation. So everything new, what you want to do is a problem. When you just have to be, you take an appointment with a project team at the untere Naturschutzbehörde of some city in Brandenburg or some district in Berlin, and everything is just a hassle and a problem. You know, we can't do that. No, you can't lay a pipe in there. You have no obligation to do so. No, there's this law. No, there's that law. Everything is a problem, and it's like that most of the really good ideas are kind of held back by just the regulatory framework, which is too tight. I mean, there should be an initiative that helps the legislation and helps the project developers and the architects and the whole players that are involved in new neighborhoods to create really new ideas and new aspects of city life, and not saying, well, there's no law that you can do so it's forbidden. I think that is another really big hustle. And the third thing is just the time frame of everything that involves innovative elements. So making a new neighborhood is a big project if you do it regularly and totally normal. But if you try to make new things happen, to make it sustainable, to make it more user-friendly, more inclusive, and try to just make the life of the people who will live there better, everything takes an extra hour or an extra year, and then there's this process and this process, and it just takes forever. I mean, it's like developing a new district, developing a new neighborhood from a reasonable size is like something you need to consider 5 to 10 years until it's done. And that is, I don't know, I think it's just too long. And most of the ideas, and that is a real problem for the project developers, they have really good ideas and they put a lot of effort in the concept and the manifesto of a new district. So, actually, they call it that way. So what should be done here and what will we want to achieve? And then everything takes so long that 5 years later, everything they planned is just obsolete because, well, there are things moving on and there are new technologies and everything, and they couldn't foresee it. And that is a killer for a lot of good ideas. So time to market, as the consultants would say, is a very, very important point. These 3 hurdles need to be addressed, and then the evolution of the Berlin Brandenburg cluster could go faster and better, I think. And then just, I mean, really, we as a state or as a whole community, we pay a lot of things not everybody likes. And if there's some district development that just went south and it didn't work, well, then the taxpayer will pay for it. So what? I mean, there are other things that don't go well. I mean, they should just be a little bit more relaxed and let things go and see what happens. I mean, the cities we live in now are not the an outcome of one planning project that had been done and built. They are living objects and they develop and evolve. And I think that the surroundings today are not as good as in the past for trying out new things. Yeah, for example, I had a project, and it's 2 years old now, where the project developers had the idea to build an infrastructural canal so that you don't have to put every grid and the electricity grid and the gas grid and the telephone lines and everything into the earth, but into a canal. It's like a building under the street. So the flexibility to add new technologies or maybe add a new something, I don't know, in the future to give that, to plan something you don't know. The idea was that there will be room for experiments, room for connecting things and do something like that. And even the investor said, well, it's pretty expensive, but yeah, there are subsidies I can use, I would buy it. And then there's a problem that, well, you are crossing open street ground, so you need a concession for that. And we don't know how to do it, and we don't know if that's allowed. Please come again in 2 years. So, and then the ideas just die, even if they are they could be done. And I think another problem is that you in the building sector, especially, that every large contract is going into a tender, and that tender when the state is involved, and sometimes the state is involved in really nice projects, like imagine Tegel. I personally was involved in the Tegel tender, where the Urban Tech Republic searched for a partner for all the new electricity and all the heat, for instance, that should be done in a low exergy way. So with very low temperatures, very sophisticated, highly new ideas. And so the public hands, they sometimes are really involved in very high sophisticated and cool projects. But when the public hand is involved, everything like the procurement of the coffee machine, to come back to the starting example, everything needs to be done in a tender and in a European-wide tender, and that will take forever. And then there will be lawsuits because it's like a super high value contracts, and everybody's very keen on getting them, and it costs money, and you have lawyers, and then you have consultants, and they cost you more money, and everything is prolonged. And that is an example where the public hand has some of the nicest spaces in Berlin. I mean, the Urban Tech Republic is a super cool idea, I think. And but being involved in that is something that took years and cost millions. I mean, just to get to the point where somebody says, well, I will invest and I will build it. I will build it. So that is a specific example where it's not always the public hands that only suck. They do a lot of nice things, but everything takes too long. There should be a possibility, but that goes deep into the federal German laws and everything, how everything is organized. Have fun doing that. That is something you could really well spend 1 or 2 master theses on. So yeah, does it need to be done? 100% yes. I would advise everybody to think about that and do something like that. But I mean, when we talk about city planning, we are forced to plan cities that were imagined in the 80s because the legislation is from the 80s. And when you build a flat, you need 2 parking spaces publicly for cars and all that stuff. Yeah, well, I mean, it's just you know that better than me, but you know what I want to point out, that the legislation just lags. It has a time lag to the actual things that need to be built or that the people want to build and that they can build. So I think that should be addressed first. And then it's a question if every city, if it's wise that every city has to make the regulatory framework itself. So wouldn't it be helpful to join together, like you said, and communicate with each other and say, well, let's make the room in the legislation for new districts, for new neighborhoods to just try things out. And that is something I think that is a core problem of the development of new sophisticated neighborhoods and districts, that the problem is not that the people don't have good ideas, it's just like everything is so expensive, takes so long, and actually all the good things are not allowed or need to be ruled with an exception and everything. That is a really, really complicated topic, but what really works well in smart districts is a smart demand side management, so to speak. So that every consumer may be a prosumer. That is a very, very nice idea. So if you run a law firm, then you have servers, and the servers, they produce heat. Maybe you can feed the heat back into a grid and somebody else can use it. And if you have a PV on the roof and you don't need all the electricity, maybe your neighbor needs all the electricity. And the development in the industry points in a direction where you just try to, at first you try to manage the demand on a smaller scale, not on a big grid scale for the whole city or the whole district, but maybe you start with the building and then with the neighbor building and then maybe with the street, and after the street managed itself and all the consumption and production and is everything worked out, then you try to manage the demand in the district, so that the grids don't need to work that hard to provide the energy because everything is provided smart. And that is something that are really nice solutions and they really do work. So like, for example, when you have a district and everybody, the sun is shining, it's in the summer, and you produce a lot of renewable energy from your PV modules on the roof, and nobody needs the electricity. But before you just feed it into the grid, for example, you could use it for the fridges in the buildings that will cool down from -18 to -22. For the food, it's irrelevant, and you use the energy in a smart way, so you don't need energy produced in a power plant at night, for example, because the cool or the warming up of the fridge will take at least 12 hours or something. So managing intelligent demands on a small scale, on a building scale, on a street scale, on a district or neighborhood scale, that is something that the smart meter powered buildings and the Internet of Things can provide, and that is not just buzzwording. There are really business cases that could be done with it. I mean, it's not that you can print your own money with it, but you don't have to burn money. I mean, if we can, I mean, realize investments that have like black zeros, so to speak, that you don't have to bring your own money. You won't earn something, but you won't burn money. That is something that is good at the moment if we can achieve that in that solutions. And that is something we work on. Biggest challenge is heat market, because that's the hardest. I mean, with the mobility, you can just switch to renewable energy powered EVs, for example. Electric vehicles, that will work in some way. I mean, that will be painful for a lot of girls and guys, but it will be done somewhere. There are solutions available for the mobility sector and for the electricity sector as well. We really do know well how to install renewable energies, and it's just a question of money, you know, and because you won't burn money with the subsidy scheme of the EEG and everything that is in place right now if you build more and more renewable energies. There will be a time where we need batteries for the electricity. That will be something that will be expensive, but electricity and mobility, they can be solved. We have an idea how to do it, but there are no real solutions for existing buildings with high temperature heat demand. So that is a real challenge, and that is something that Berlin and Brandenburg are working on, and especially Berlin knows that the Energiewende only will be a success if the Wärmewende follows now, that have been not in the focus in the past. Everything concentrated on electricity and mobility, and that is all okay because we made huge steps in these areas, but the heat market is like half of the CO2 emissions in Germany, energy related, are from the heat market. So that is something we don't have a really good idea how to do it with the existing buildings. The new built buildings, no problem, they are all cool, they are all efficient, everything, no problem with the new buildings, but the existing buildings are a real challenge. No, there are no technologies that work in a normal way, because when you need like 80 degrees Celsius on the radiator, you need like a 1000 Celsius flame in the boiler of some kind. So, well, yeah, you can use electricity, but with something that is just like an electro boiler, and then there's just the efficiency of one. So for 1 kilowatt hour of electricity, you will get 1 kilowatt hour of heat. And that wouldn't be a problem if the electricity wouldn't cost you 25 cents. So to heat a normal multi-family building in Berlin, somewhere in Charlottenburg, would not cost 100 euros per month per flat, but 500 euros per month per flat. So is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but it's like way too expensive to do so. And there are no good technologies that deliver high heat for existing buildings with the radiators in every room, not in the floor and not in the ceiling and not in the walls, but normal radiators, we all know, they need like 80, 90 degrees Celsius of warm water coming into them. And when you want to create that, no heat pump will help you, because the efficiency of the heat pump on that temperature levels is like 1. So you get 1 kilowatt hour heat for 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. And could it be done? Yes, but it's super, super expensive. And we have no idea how to do that in existing buildings, but to insulate them and to change the the secondary system. So get rid of the radiators, build in new wall heatings and everything, and floor heatings, and that is even more expensive. And then you can use heat pumps. But I mean, we have a lot of people that are just capable to pay the rent and their bills, and to say them, well, you need to invest like 100,000 euros per flat, it's just not possible. And then it's something, how can all the people in a city be part of the Energiewende and not only be something like a watcher? And that is a real problem the politics have to address. So, well, we have no technologies that really work well in existing buildings, yes. Besides boilers. Oil boilers are forbidden by 2026. You can't install a new one. We get rid of them, but gas boilers are from every year in Germany, 750,000 roughly heating devices are installed, and more than 600,000 of that are boilers. So, and newly installed is in retrofit in existing buildings. So when you install a boiler in 2021, and it's a German quality boiler, it will run like forever, and it will still run in 2050. So we have lock-in effects with every boiler that is now connected to the gas grid, because it will be, statistically, it will still run in 2040. So that was the point I expressed earlier. You need to get the gas greener, because you can't change out all the boilers in all the existing buildings. It's just not possible. I think they should do something like or create something like a task force. I mean, they don't want to merge. I mean, I can understand that. So the idea of merging states in Germany is not new, and that could be a solution to some of the problems we discussed, or maybe a step in the right direction. But I think if you don't merge, maybe make a task force, and the task force really need to address all the things concerning legislation, concerning financing of retrofitting buildings, of creating new neighborhoods and new districts, and how to integrate the possibilities of Brandenburg, where you have space and biomass, for example, and a little bit of sun and some wind, and Berlin, where you have none of that, but a lot of demand. So to bring that together, that would be something really coming to my mind that could make a lot of sense in the future. Because what we have as a problem is that nobody realizes that 2040 is like tomorrow. It's only 19 years. It's so a short amount of time actually to do all the things and to reach all the goals, the CO2 reduction goals and everything in 2040, that we really need to work it out in 2020 to have a reasonable chance to just get into the near of our goals.